Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Chair Seer,
Here.
Director Gleason.
Here.
Director Holman is absent. Thank you.
Thank you. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
I'll second. Would you do a roll call for us, please, Clerk?
Chair Seer,
Yes?
Director Gleason.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 2-0.
Okay, now there's an opportunity for members of the public who wish to comment on items not on our agenda. Is there anyone who would like to do that? Is there anyone online who would like to do that?
Chair Seer, I do not have any oral communications.
Thank you. Okay, well, in that case, we're ready to go forward. Approval of the minutes. I'll move approval of the minutes for the 25th of July.
I'll second.
Okay. You're busy, Clerk.
Chair Seer,
Yes.
Director Gleason.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 2-0.
Boy, we're off on a roll now. Okay. Now we get to the meat of the matter. So review of existing conditions, site opportunity and constraints analysis, and conceptual design alternatives for the proposed Bear Creek Redwoods North parking area. Shazam, may we have staff presentation, please?
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? This is on, right? This is Ana Ruiz, General Manager. I'll say a few remarks first before staff head over to the podium to provide the presentation. So today we are coming before our committee, which is there's numerous steps for projects like these that Midpen takes on. First, we work through the committee to evaluate possibilities, options, conceptual designs, all the way to a solid project description that we then present to our full board of directors for then approval of the project description, so we can then proceed with environmental review, permitting, final design, et cetera. So we're at the very beginning stages of this project, and it's an important one for us because back in 2019, I believe, or 2019, we opened Bear Creek Redwoods. Is that correct? And it's been a long time coming. We had Midpen actually purchase these lands alongside Peninsula Open Space Trust through a partnership back in 1999 with the ultimate goal of opening these lands to the public. We are a public agency. These are public lands, public open space lands. And so this provides a really wonderful opportunity to welcome the public to a natural preserve close to where many people live. And in particular, Bear Creek Redwoods, it's providing a redwood forest environment, which is fairly unique for the South Bay. And so in 2019, we opened a portion of the preserve with a parking area, and it's become very popular, especially on weekends. We are in the process of finishing up trail work in the northeastern section of the preserve. And an additional 4 miles of trail will be open to the public here in the spring. And those 4 miles of trail are much more, what I would say, much more easily accessible to a broader spectrum of our public, given the grades and given the terrain. And so we do expect even higher visitation, higher demands to visit the land. And so expanding the parking, I think, is incredibly important. And I say that because I know that today for this meeting, we did receive a number of comment letters, primarily from neighbors concerned about a number of things, concerned about trespassing, about littering, about safety, about traffic safety, and a number of other concerns. And what I have to say is, not addressing the parking issue is a bigger issue still, because we have seen in many of our other open space lands where there is inadequate parking, that there are many, many more issues to have to manage and address and many, many more neighbor challenges that they have to face. So we're trying to address that upfront in this case and bring in that additional parking that we know we need. I mean, it's already becoming evident, especially peak summers in the weekend, with additional mileage of trail open to the public, and again, much more accessible. That is only going to increase. And so we are looking at finding solutions to address the use, because we know it's going to come up. And we want to make sure that we avoid impacts to surrounding roadways, impacts to neighbors. And then also, we are now, back in 2021, the board of directors approved our wildland fire resiliency program, which really has ramped up incredibly our fuel treatments and fire resiliency work throughout our lands. And that includes Bear Creek Redwoods. And that will continue. And we've been ramping up those efforts across our acreage, including in use areas, high use areas like parking areas. And so that will be part of this project, and that will be part of the ongoing management of these lands as well to address those issues. And we've been working in close partnership with other agencies, including CAL FIRE, to address fuel treatments across major roadways as well, including in this area. So that's another big effort that we have undertaken. So with that, you know, I know that there's a lot of concerns and issues. As part of this process, we're looking to make sure that we address those issues and we address them appropriately, and that if there are needs for additional, for example, traffic safety measures, we can incorporate those as part of the project as well. So with that, I'll hand it over to our staff.
Thank you.
Okay, can you all hear me? How about now? Okay, if you can't hear me, just say so. Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. My name is Matea Curtis Ottoboni, and I'm here to discuss the Bear Creek Redwoods North Parking Area conceptual design alternatives with you today. So the general manager's recommendations for this project are to receive a presentation on the Bear Creek Redwoods North Parking Area conceptual design alternatives, including existing conditions and site opportunities and constraints analysis, and to provide feedback on the conceptual alternatives for the new parking area to inform our design changes. So our agenda for today includes a project overview and background, technical studies, a summary of opportunities and constraints, summary of stakeholder feedback that we've received, an overview of conceptual design, next steps, and our discussion. So to orient you to the project location, this is obviously in Bear Creek Redwoods. So the north parking area is located between gates BCO1 and BCO2, which is the stables driveway. So here's my pointer. So BCO1 is over here. That's used sometimes for volunteer parking, and it accesses some existing patrol roads. So our north parking area is in this location here, and this will come up a little later in our discussion, but just wanted to make you aware that BC12 is located over here, and that's another one of our gates. So some background about this project and how we got here. So in the preserve plan, which was approved in January of 2017, the north parking area was called for during phase 3 of our implementation. So some changes have happened since the plan was written, and we've received a lot of visitorship at Bear Creek Redwoods. So because of high visitation, the board made the decision to move the north parking area into phase 2 of implementation. So the goals of the north parking area from our preserve plan include just general public use and facilities goals to allow general public access and enhance low intensity recreational opportunities within the preserve. There's also the public use and facilities objective to expand and improve preserve parking capacity. Specifically to the north parking area, the preserve plan calls for a parking area between BCO1 and BCO2 with 40 to 50 vehicle parking spaces, approximately 8 horse trailer parking spaces, vault toilet, equestrian staging, and bicycle racks. So as you can see on the right side of my screen, There are a few pictures of the north parking area conceptual design that were included in the preserve plan. Originally, it called for reverse parking for horse trailers and kind of a tiered approach. And within the scope of the parking lot that we're carrying forward, we're still looking at approximately 50 vehicle parking spaces, approximately 8 horse trailer parking spaces. We're looking at a connection to the phase 2 and multi-use trails, and something that wasn't called for directly in the preserve plan, but we're leaving open to include in our design our transportation demand management strategies. So our preserves became very, very popular in the wake of COVID-19. So including strategies to help manage our demand is something that we're not committing to at this moment, but we're leaving open in our design. So to orient you on our project study area, this is an overview of the site. So this green ribbon shows the section of Bear Creek Road that was studied for traffic safety. This purple box shows the proposed driveway location. This yellow dotted line shows the boundary that was included in the preserve plan. And then the white dotted line shows the boundary that was included in our topographic survey. So this is a summary of the technical studies. So as I said, this was included in the preserve plan, which was a full EIR effort. So a number of studies have already been conducted. And a number of studies are going to be reconducted just to confirm what was found in the preserve plan and just reaffirm what we've already learned, add on anything that's changed since. So some of those studies include botanical resources, topographic survey, cultural resources, traffic, geotechnical studies, and wildlife studies. So as I said, some of these were previously conducted, and those studies with asterisks by their names are the ones that are being updated, and just to confirm that those studies were previously conducted are still correct. Our traffic study was intended to be conducted this past summer, but due to closures on Bear Creek Road, our consultant wasn't able to get our full traffic numbers at peak visitation. So that's been pushed to next summer in order for us to get a full picture of what traffic looks like. We don't anticipate significant changes in the findings because these were done at a very, very intensive level for the level of an EIR. So existing conditions. So this is a site that faces northwest on the project site. So as you can see, it's a pretty open site. It's a meadow. It's about 2.5 acres. And it mostly consists of open area. It's grassland, relatively flat compared to other areas in the preserve, but there is some slope that I'll go over in later slides that show that there's kind of varied slope throughout the area. So our goal is to protect habitat. That's one of our missions as an open space district. So that's part of the balance of providing habitat protection as well as enhancing public access. So this is going to be a summary of our opportunities and constraints. This is an overview site. As you can see, it's a pretty open site. It's mostly cleared of trees. On the lower left corner, you can see an arrow pointing to where the Bear Creek Stables is. And as we go through, it's going to show different aspects of the plan. So this line shows our existing disc line. This is for fire protection, and it's already a disturbed area. So this yellow section is our existing preserved trails and patrol roads. So these white lines show what is visible from Bear Creek Road. So there's an area that's screened by trees that's over more on the northern part, but this area outlined in white shows what would be visible from the roadway. These green circles show the areas that are relatively low slope. So these are between 0 and 10% slope. So within our engineering design, we have worked to go within our existing topography to make a lower engineering effort with less grading and less retaining walls for alternatives. These yellow circles show areas of moderate slope. That's 10 to 20% slope. And these red areas show areas where it's 20 to 50% slope. So to summarize our public engagement efforts, this spring, we combined efforts with the Bear Creek Redwoods Phase 2 Trails Project because we were operating in a similar area and within a similar time frame. So we chose to reach out to the public at the same time. We conducted a few virtual stakeholder meetings for mountain bike interest groups and equestrian interest groups, as well as a public workshop that was open to everyone at the Los Gatos Adult Recreation Center. So this is a summary of some key comment themes that we received throughout our public outreach effort. So a lot of the comments that we heard in our initial feedback were concerns over visual impacts of putting this parking lot in the meadow and the habitat loss of also putting this parking lot in the meadow. So some people requested that we look into alternate locations, some of those located at BCO1 and BC12, which I highlighted earlier in our overview map. So because this area was studied in the EIR, the environmental documentation has already been completed under CEQA, and it's been very thoroughly studied. So there are a couple of reasons we didn't pursue alternate locations. So one was our traffic study that was conducted as part of the preserve plan. It looked all up and down Bear Creek Road, and there were only 2 areas with safe line of sight, and that was at the existing Alma College lot and this location. So locations like BCO1 didn't have adequate line of sight, and neither did BC12, which would involve an exit off of Highway 17, and that's a much bigger undertaking to make that safe as a public access point. Additionally, sites like BC12 and BCO1 weren't big enough to provide to fulfill the goals of the preserve plan. So for those reasons, this was the location that we studied, and we didn't pursue alternatives further. So other comments that we received throughout the comment process, people expressed interest in the opportunity for interpretive elements, something that highlighted other aspects besides Alma College, natural history, things like that. We received some voice support for pull-through trailer parking as opposed to back-in trailer parking. And we received some concerns about what an increase in users in Bear Creek Redwoods would mean. So now I'm going to hand it over to Scott to discuss the design alternatives.
Thanks, Matea. Good afternoon. Scott Reeves, Senior Capital Project Manager with our Engineering and Construction Department. I got to lead the design effort on these conceptual designs, so I appreciate the opportunity to walk you through them. So what we're looking at here is what we call option 1. And our intent here was to bring a design forth that developed what was shown in the preserve plan. So as Matea mentioned, it was sited generally in the 2.5 acre open meadow. And we need to accommodate for the sloping topography. So one of the earliest observations when I embarked on this design effort was the amount of slope that we'd be accommodating in this design in order to accommodate 50 vehicle spaces and the 8 equestrians. And so one of the most notable points about this design is that we do anticipate a large amount of grading and retaining wall efforts in order to create that tiered drive-through experience that was shown in the preserve plan. And I do think that that design approach is the best way to accommodate this multi-aisle design configuration. So let me walk you through it just real briefly. The entry and exit would be off of Bear Creek Road here. And then it would be a one-way pull down to the first aisle, which would be where passenger vehicles would park. We have cited it for 50 passenger vehicles, including an ADA parking area, which is sited as close as possible to our flattest portion of the project site. Equestrians would continue to pull down to a secondary level, a lower level, and these would be pull-through spaces. As we heard in our public engagement efforts, the desire to have pull-through rather than reverse parking spaces for equestrian. So 8 equestrian vehicles could pull in and then pull through and pull out and exit. We propose that a trailhead at this stage would be located in the northeastern area of the parking area where we have the flatter spaces. We do consider, though, that with the multi-use efforts that are ongoing right now, this trailhead location may be adjusted so that we can make the most logical connection to those future multi-use trails that would potentially be coming through in this vicinity of the preserve. But right now, this trailhead location does provide us immediate access to what Matea showed as existing patrol routes and trails that are over in the northeastern section, basically along this disc line, and then just out of sight is where those trails exist now. One of the things to mention is that any design that we propose and move forward, it will fully meet ADA accessibility requirements. That's regardless of the concepts we show today. Also, we are over 5,000 square feet of impervious area with all of our designs. So we will expect low impact development C3 stormwater detention system infrastructure, similar to what we've done at other preserves such as El Corte de Madera. So regardless of the design, we do anticipate some infrastructure that would come along with this design to be implemented to meet municipal stormwater requirements. So just in summary, with this design option, we do propose 50 vehicle spaces with 8 equestrian spaces. We do anticipate just under 1,000 cubic yards of grading and roughly 1,000 lineal feet of retaining wall, and those are shown in the black dashes around the south and southwestern portions of the design, with 46,000 square feet of impervious paving at this juncture. And we do anticipate approximately 8 trees to be removed. I did want to note that General Manager Ruiz spoke briefly about our wildland fire resiliency efforts out at this preserve, and it does include over 200 acres of shaded fuel break and fuel reduction efforts that were completed in July of 2023, which actually included a significant amount in this northeastern portion of the preserve. And it removed coyote brush and a lot of understory to help show us the remaining habitat of oak trees and whatnot. And so a lot of the oaks in this area are still very juvenile. The ones that are proposed are fairly small. And we have worked closely with our Natural Resources Department to understand the impacts of the trees to be removed, and worked on a design that would best accommodate all of our goals. I did want to also mention that through the design process, we worked with our Land and Facilities Department, as well as our Visitor Services Department, to identify where we had design weaknesses, either in maintenance or in security and safety. And so we have worked to address those, and we will continue to do so as we work through the process. It's one of the nice things of doing this all in-house at this point, is that we're all in the same vicinity and under the same roof, and can do so fairly seamlessly. I wanted to talk about the transportation demand management strategies just really briefly. So in this option 1, we show a potential for a drop zone up by the restroom, which could potentially serve as a future shuttle stop, understanding that that's not being considered at this point. But we want the flexibility to accommodate these type of things in the future. So we do have the ability to accommodate something like that in the future. This could also serve as an ADA area as well. To address some of the transportation demand management strategies, such as reservable parking or priority parking, we do anticipate in this design that it would be accommodated somewhere in this main parking aisle. So we wouldn't have a separate parking area. We would just need to accommodate it within the main parking aisle. I'm going to move on to option 2. And so as we heard, we received some feedback from the public regarding the impacts or perceived impacts to the meadow. We do acknowledge that the meadow has habitat value, and so in our conversations with Natural Resources Department, we started talking about alternative locations that could serve several functions. One, to preserve as much of that meadow as possible. Two, to address visual impact comments that we heard. And three, to reduce our grading, our retaining wall, and our engineering efforts for this parking area. So what I bring forth is an alternate to consider, and I'll walk you through it. The driveway would be generally located in the same area as option one. One thing that I didn't note about the driveway is that that final location will likely be refined when we go through our encroachment permitting process with Santa Clara County. So we do anticipate that there will be some signage and some right-of-way modifications, minor in nature, but some modifications that will come out of that encroachment permit process. And this driveway may move a few feet in one direction or another. In the hexagon traffic study, they did identify a zone of about 75 to 100 feet along Bear Creek Road in which we could site this driveway. So we do have some play there to find that final location. So visitors would enter in that driveway location, and then they would pass down through the equestrian parking area, which in this design, we accommodate 6 rather than 8 in the previous. And then we've cited 2 smaller satellite parking areas in 2 of the large clearings in the north and to the south of that main loop. And these are cited more nestled within the existing or near the drip lines of the existing vegetation in order to provide us better screening. Matei also showed that we have more favorable slopes in this area, so it's much more gentler from a user trail use perspective, but it also reduces our engineering effort for retaining walls and for grading. Between those 2 parking areas would be a trailhead with our ADA parking. And so similar to option 1, that trailhead location can be adjusted based on where we need to connect to the multi-use trail. So we could go to the north to make that connection, or we could go to the south to make that final connection to the multi-use trail. One of the strengths about this design as well is this looping opportunity that we have here that is outside of our parking area. As we've seen in our high capacity or our high demand parking areas, when our parking lots are full, people want to stay and wait for their spot to become available. And so finding a safe place for them to do that is important. And this design considers that as part of the solution. As for transportation demand management strategies, because we have separated or satellite parking areas, there's a possibility that one of these could become a reservable or priority parking area, should that be a desire in the future. And furthermore, we would find a shuttle spot somewhere along this exit route to be able to accommodate a future shuttle, should that be considered. So in summary, this design provides, right now we're at 49 passenger vehicle spaces, 6 equestrian spaces. We have slightly more tree removals anticipated as we push into these flatter spaces. And we have much less grading and much less retention to do, retaining walls in this design option. And again, ADA accessibility will be addressed in this option as well. So if I move on to just our summary slide that compares these.
Excuse me, just before you move on, would you point out where the horse trailer parking would be on this?
Absolutely. So we've got 2 spaces on either side of the drive aisle here, and then 2 more spaces up on the drive aisle here. So they're sited within the oak trees that we're looping around with this looped design. So when we look at the goals of the project and we do our alternatives comparison, we start with the value versus the cost. So we generated a rough order of magnitude cost estimate as part of this effort. And we saw that option 2 was approximately half the cost of option 1. And several reasons for that. One is the less amount of retaining wall and grading, and then also the lower amount of impervious pavement, which not only translates through that cost itself, but also the amount of C3 infrastructure that we need to provide. We do think that option 2 does a better job of minimizing impacts to the site. One, from the footprint size is smaller, but also from aesthetic impact of viewshed from Bear Creek Road. As well, integration of transportation demand management strategies. I personally think that we're trending towards having lots or spaces of our lots that are need to be controllable if they're going to be a priority or a reservation area. And so being able to cordon an area off easily, I think, is an asset for our designs. And just general alignment with project goals and policies. As I mentioned, we worked with our natural resources department to see which one was going to best accomplish our goals of avoidance and minimization of natural resource impacts. And it seems to point towards option 2. And then again, with public comments, we heard 2 that I think we've accommodated very well. One was the desire for pull-through parking. Both options do that. But the other was the desire to keep the meadow intact. And so alternative 2 better accomplishes that. And it's not to say that alternative 2 will be completely hidden from sight, from view, but it will be partially. So it won't be, especially if you're traveling northbound towards Highway 17, you will still see this parking area. But if you're traveling up the mountain, it will be mostly obscured from your view. I'm going to move on to just wrap up our presentation here to give you an outline of our next steps. So as General Manager Ruiz mentioned, we are at the beginning of our conceptual design effort, and we want to come back to the P&R to show some refined designs, and then come to the full board for direction on what we move forward with in reconfirming our CEQA EIR effort. So we do anticipate doing a reconfirmation of our CEQA studies, and those are those future studies that we have planned from botanical, cultural, and then again, we're looking forward to getting Hexagon Traffic Consulting back out on site as soon as Bear Creek Road is operating at full capacity again, and our preserve is back into its summer capacity as well. And what we'll be doing with that traffic study is re-looking at our level of service, which we did back in 2016. We'll re-look at our future growth expectations for the area, as well as acknowledging some of the changes in the preserve since that plan was made. For example, how the stables has changed over time, and how just our preserves are being used. So we're basically going to refresh all of our traffic data numbers. We'll also be doing new traffic speed counts, which were performed back last time, that will reconfirm our driveway placement and our line of sight entering and exiting Bear Creek Road. So ultimately, our goal is to implement this parking area, if all goes well, by 2026, 2027. So with that, I just wanted to summarize the general manager's recommendations, which would be to receive the presentation on the Bear Creek Redwoods North Parking Area conceptual design alternatives, including the existing conditions, site opportunity and constraints analysis, and then provide the feedback that we are looking for in order for us to move this project forward. Thank you for your time.
Any question, Coach?
Yeah, thanks very much for the presentation. And I really appreciate that comparison chart that you were showing there. I think we've talked about that before. I find those extremely helpful. Also, thanks for the creativity in putting option 2 on the table, and also for responding to public input in both cases. This may be just a suggestion for the future. I think at the beginning you showed the view lines, and if you could overlay those on the maps of the alternatives, I think it would would actually show even more, what you're referring to with respect to the how those options impact the views. A number of people have asked me about the parking close to BCO1, and I've been out there on that road and quite a few times, and I walked around there and I convinced myself that it's a lousy place for a driveway. But the packet does mention this other option of routing the road down from this currently proposed driveway. And when I was looking at that, I didn't feel like if somebody came to me and asked me, why aren't we putting that option on the table? I feel like I don't have enough information to convince them that that's not a good option. So for example, you mentioned about the size of the area. I think there's some mention of grades. There's mention of the requirement to make the road 22 feet wide going down there. I'm sure that means removing more trees and maybe more retaining walls. I think it would be good to have, I mean, without doing more studies, probably the staff has a lot of information about that comparison. And I'm just maybe you could speak to it a little more, but it might also be good to have that backing information in whatever materials we put forth in the future.
Yeah, and I can answer that now if you like. Yeah, so we did look at that. And so you're absolutely correct that aside from the traffic on Bear Creek Road at BCO1, we have two other constraints. One is the size of how much parking we can accommodate in that staging area. And not to mention, we use it currently for our maintenance patrol and permit parking for, volunteer access, things like that. So we've got that constraint is just the amount of space available to us inside of BCO1. And then second is to build a 22-foot wide driveway down there between the amount of impervious that we would be adding and the amount of tree loss and the amount of retaining walls that are needed. We would be, it's a significantly different project. And so I think what we can do is prepare a simple exhibit that identifies those impacts kind of at a rough order level to help illustrate those challenges, because we can easily show that that parking it wouldn't be anywhere close to 50 plus the 8 equestrians, and the amount of tree loss would be significantly more.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. And again, I don't want to create a whole bunch of work there, but I think I actually do have a bunch of people who ask me about this, so it would be great to have some something more behind the answer. So, do you have questions? Go ahead.
Thank you, Craig. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's kind of thing that I really appreciate all the effort that went into this. Very, very thorough. And the main thing that you mentioned early on about the cooperation among different departments, that kind of synergy, I think, is fantastic. And I really applaud everybody who was involved in that. At this point, I don't have any further questions. I do have some comments for a little bit later. If you don't have any more questions, okay, go for it.
So you mentioned the size of the trees. Is there a threshold where it goes on your list as a tree that'll be counted? Like, what's the size of
6-inch DBH, so diameter at about 54 inches or 48 inches is the threshold. Yeah. So all of these are larger than 6-inch.
And is there any significant difference? I mean, I know there's a difference in number of trees between the two options, but is there any substantial difference in that when you get more into that wooded area, you're cutting bigger trees? Or?
No, I don't think so. The trees that we are looking at are kind of on the periphery of those stands or those forests that we're working within. And when we walked the site with natural resources, we did talk about that, the value of the outside tree versus the value of a tree inside of a forest. And as unfortunate as it is to remove the trees, the ones that are on the edge there not more okay to remove, but they do yeah, it seems to be a lesser evil than removing the ones in interior.
And do we ever relocate them, or is it always just cutting them?
I don't think so. I think there's several constraints to that. I think you know, our planting efforts are probably a better use of our energy than trying to relocate. You know, the impact of trying to remove one from a forest and then replace it, or remove it, replant it.
For the equestrian spots, what's the likely surface for those? Are they look different in the diagram? So
Yeah, you know, I did intentionally show them as a more natural surface. You know, our maintenance department land and facilities have challenges of maintaining gravel parking areas. So certainly we're trying to move away from that, just from a level of effort it takes to keep them operable. But I do understand that equestrians prefer those natural surfaces, and so I would think the conversation would still happen as to how much and what type of surface we would use in those areas. But I did propose a natural, more like a base rock surface for those.
And in option 2, all of the cars go by either between or by the equestrian spots. Do we have any experience on, does that impact traffic flow in any significant way, or is that just okay?
Well, I think that one of our goals is to make sure that we provide enough space for equestrians to manage their equipment and their horses outside of the drive aisle. With the level of service that we anticipate for these lots, there should not be any impact. If so, it would be a momentary delay for if an equestrian's managing their tack or their horse, or something like that. But we do have more space to work with in that area of option 2, to the point where we can encourage more open, easier space for that management to happen outside of the drive aisle of the parking lot.
Okay, I think I'm done. Thanks.
Thank you. I had one and then it disappeared. But anyway, very thorough. So at this point then, there's an opportunity for public comment. And if
Okay.
up to the podium, and
For members of the public here in person, we have public comment cards on the table just outside. We ask you to fill that out. And also for those online, you can go to our website at openspace.org/public-comment to submit a form. Ms. Nancy Cole did submit a public comment card. We do not see her online. I just want to see if she's here in person. Nancy Cole.
well, if we have somebody online while we're getting prepared here, that would be wonderful. The pause that refreshes. Thank you, Luana. No, she's not. Okay, so we don't have anyone online at the moment. So is it Mike Bushu? Did I say it correctly? No, I blew it, and people blow my last name all the time. So give it to me again, Mike.
Mike Bushu,
Thank you.
Bushu, yes. E-Track, Equestrian Trail Riders Action Committee, part of the equestrian community. You've done a very good job on the options here, and I appreciate what you've done. I personally like the slope slide that you put in there that gives an idea just how challenging this can be for the area that it is. I think option 2 is still probably the best, even though we have most all the traffic coming past the first 4 spots. Brings back times that I've been at El Corte Madera. And in El Corte Madera, we have 4 tandem lines in straight line. And everybody has to go around that's doing the parking there. That's a narrow spot. I know you have done a much better job on giving a wider area for the trailers to be in, which will make a huge difference because at El Corte Madera, if I am tacking my horse up, which is 15 minutes out of a 4 or 5 hour period that I'm there, I do impede traffic slightly. But most of the people have always been very good at, they go to start driving out, they see the horse standing there. I move the horse out of the way, they slide by with the car, and it's not a problem. And the times that I've been up there, the parking lot has been full at El Corte Madera. So it's not like it was an empty day. It was a full day. So I like that. To me, tandem spots are just as good as the other options. Preferably, I would go with the tandem spots over the option 1, because in option 1, when you look at it, you might think you have 8 slots there, but when I pull in, I have to have area beside my trailer or some other place where I do my tacking up. And so out of those 8 spots, you might be lucky if we can get 4 or 5 of them usable. The other option I would say is the other 2 spots in the other section. I look at it and go, I would like to see us using 6 spots up there, but if we're not using those, put a sign that says equestrian parking, shuttle parking, and go for your travel traffic that way would be my option as to what to do there. The main item is give us recognition that we're there, show us that they are equestrian spots and it's a equestrian friendly area. And that's what will make the difference to it. I like option 2. And I really think that we'll be able to get trees to grow in 20 years that'll block out any view issues that we have.
You do have someone online. Yes.
Online, we have Nancy Cole. So we're having a little bit of technical difficulties right now with the online.
Greg, Gleason, do you have any further comments or thoughts? Okay, we'll wait.
Nancy Cole, the technical issue has been identified. You're running an older version of Zoom. We ask you to update, or if you can call in to the meeting. The call-in number is located on the agenda with the meeting ID.
Well, I hate to just sit. My comments are, I really appreciate them, the depth and thoroughness of this. I, first of all, took a look at, 60 pages of information for this afternoon's meeting. But as I went through it, I thought it was very well organized and really very helpful, especially the comparisons of what the constraints were and what the opportunities were. And I think both designs are really very thoroughly thought out. And at this point, I'm leaning on option 2. I think it's really very interesting use of the space in response to the natural conditions Um, Go ahead. Dr. Gleason?
Yeah, I think also it was great to get that creative option on the table and, find something that addresses more of the views and the look of the meadow. I know from speaking to many people who are close to Bear Creek, that was a really important thing for them. I haven't heard from those people since this information came out, whether that completely addresses their issues or not. But just looking at the view lines that were shown and thinking about the area as I know it myself, I think it does go a long way. And I was really glad to see that option. When I first saw the information, I wasn't sure if the 6 versus 8 equestrian spots would be any issue. It sounds like maybe not. So I think that's good. There was, I did hear from one person that there was interest in a site visit, if that's a possibility, to be able to go out there and see it on the ground where, what would these options look like? And maybe also, since there are these concerns about the BCO1 option, maybe to point out some of the constraints on the ground there. Yeah, so I also think option 2 looks very attractive. Do we have Nancy?
We'll be able to get Nancy through the Zoom. Would you like to return back to the public comments?
Yes.
Excuse me, Deputy District Clerk Luana. I do have Nancy Cole. I'm going to go ahead and promote her as a panelist in order to allow her to speak, and then I'll remove her back to an attendee. So please go ahead and put on the timer. Thank you. Nancy, are you able to unmute yourself?
Oh, the joys of technology.
Hmm.
When they work.
I did speak with her. She did let me know that her only comment was that it was a great job and thank you for the PowerPoint presentation. I will go back with her and see if she has additional comment, but we're having technical issues with her coming through. So I'll get back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Well, we'll pause for a little.
Committee members, this is Ana Ruiz. Just to follow up on the question about a site tour. The site is a little difficult in that there isn't a great place to park nearby. And the pathways right now leading to it are not open to the general public. And so it makes it a bit challenging to host a public site tour. So I'll speak to staff to see the logistics around that. Can we make that happen in a reasonable way? And if not, maybe what we could do in lieu of that is have maybe a series of pictures and descriptions that we could provide.
That might be the better choice, simply because it could reach more people more easily. Any luck, Luana?
This is Maria Soria, District Clerk. I did speak with Mrs. Cole, and unfortunately she's having technical issues and she apologizes. Again, she says she thanks you for the presentation and she gathered some great information. And again, she apologizes. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad she was able to get the information that we presented, and I appreciate her effort to speak to us directly. That's always a valuable input. So at this point then, I think we are ready to deal with the recommendations of the general manager.
Staff, are there a set of recommendations that you can put up?
Yeah. So really, the most meaningful thing is for us to hear where we were on the mark, where we weren't, design ideas that you would like us to explore, things that you would like us to see, to bring back, that would help further the process. So we're ready to take the next step in our design effort. And so if we want to still see two options, we can bring back two. If we want to see more, we can bring back more. Anything that comes to mind that would help us bring a preferred concept to the full board would be appreciated.
Well, my thought at the moment is that you've heard from the committee, and both of us are leaning for option two. We've heard from the public leaning in option two. And you've also heard some of Director Gleason's comments about what would be helpful in terms of in fleshing out the presentation to make it more clear, particularly for folks who are not on site or really familiar with the site. The extra graphics was hugely helpful to me, and I think to others. So you have an additional comment there, Director Gleason?
Not in that. One other thing that came to mind is in previous discussions, Director Holman has brought up the topic of striping and the sort of visual look of the striping of the parking lots, and just to try and get creative options on the table that might look more natural or less jarring. So that's another thing. Maybe that's getting ahead of ourselves, but if we can just get that considered along the way, I think that would be good. I guess one other thing is, with respect to the traffic study, is there something that forces us to do another round of that? I'm just wondering, are we really going to get a lot of new information out of that?
I want to say that given our own due diligence to safety, we're embarking on reconfirming our traffic analysis. I unfortunately I can't speak to how long the other traffic study would be valid, but I do think that we acknowledge the traffic as being a significant contributor to the success of this project, and a small expense for us to have current data, given that it, 7 years have elapsed since we did look at we pulled that data, and some of the projections we did were 15-year projections. So I do think that there is value for us to re-up those and look 15 years into the future, now that we do have a pandemic between us and that last traffic study as well. So
Okay.
yeah.
Otherwise, I think I agree with Director Sear. I think it'd be fine to keep these options on the table, but it seems like I think probably both we and the staff are leaning towards a preferred option.
Yeah, I think having both of them just to visually for the whole board have some sense of why you got to what you're suggesting is. It's very clear the comparison between the two options for multitude of reasons, but the little clocks that you use to illustrate the constraints and opportunities with each of the proposals, I think it very clearly indicates which one is the better of the two. So maybe a new impervious product by the time we get to the point of having to pave the lot. So, okay.
Thank you.